They laughed when she saluted. Not loudly, just a twitch of the lip from one, a cough-disguised chuckle from the other. The kind of dismissal that men give each other when they believe they are looking at the wrong person in the wrong place. Staff Sergeant Jonah Reeds smirked as he circled behind her, dust rising from the dry Nevada wind curling under the checkpoint canopy. He jabbed a thumb toward her duffel. "Mind if I see what's so important you had to cut through priority access, ma'am?" Captain Ardenvale stood still. She did not answer. Her boots were caked with red dirt, her face sunburnt and creased at the edges, but her spine held the line. Corporal Finch, posted beside Reeds, leaned on his M4 and gave her a once-over. "Seriously, what is she? Logistics? Admin? Civil affairs? No tabs, no ribbons. Looks like a reservist they forgot to send home." They were half right. She had no visible insignia, no unit designation. The uniform was regulation, but faded, like it had seen 1,000 suns and been washed in dust. Her duffel was old canvas, not tactical nylon. No name tags. No ID badge, just a thick manila folder, locked with a red tape seal marked Level 5, Eyes Only. Reeds unzipped the bag, slow and showy. "Reg says we can inspect anything not marked diplomatic. You know how that works, right?" Vale nodded once. Her jaw flexed, but she said nothing. Inside, next to the folder, lay a single black flight helmet. Scuffed, scorched. On the back, barely visible through wear and grime, was a ghost of an emblem. A stylized hawk's wing wrapped around the number 12. Reeds froze. Just for a beat, then zipped it back up. "All right then," he said, stepping back too fast. "Looks clear." Finch stared, confused. "You good?" Reed's voice dropped. "Check her credentials again." "I did." "Check again." Before Finch could argue, a low rumble vibrated through the concrete. A convoy was approaching, 4 up-armored Humvees and a matte black Suburban. The vehicles pulled up without slowing, and a tall figure in desert fatigues stepped out of the lead SUV, Brigadier General Marcus Keene. Silence rippled outward like a shockwave. Reeds snapped to attention so fast he nearly dropped his weapon. Keene's gaze swept the checkpoint, then locked on Vale. "You kept me waiting, Captain," he said, voice like gravel. Vale stepped forward and offered a crisp salute. "Mission file delivered as ordered, sir." Keene returned the salute, slowly, deliberately, then turned to the stunned checkpoint staff. "Sergeant Reeds, Corporal Finch, do you know who you just delayed?" "No, sir." Keene walked to the duffel, opened it himself, and pulled out the helmet. He held it up so they could both see the emblem. This patch belonged to Ghost Hawk 12, Operation Iron Pulse, Valley Corridor. She flew through a blackout zone under live fire, no drone cover, no uplink, extracted a 6-man unit from a kill box. Command wrote her off a year later. She never said a damn word. Reeds paled. "Sir, I didn't—" "You didn't ask." "That's the point." The desert wind howled between the vehicles. The moment held like something sacred. Keene handed the helmet back to Vale without a word. She tucked it under her arm, her expression unreadable. Then he nodded once. "Let's move." The convoy rolled out, Vale seated in the Suburban's back row beside 2 silent operatives in black gear. Through the tinted window, Reeds and Finch stood rigid, eyes downcast. Vale leaned back, closed her eyes. Another checkpoint. Another judgment, another silence survived, but this time, someone had remembered. The elevator dropped 3 floors beneath the runway. No music, just the metallic hum of reinforced cables and the faint throb of air filtration cycling in cold, recycled gusts. Captain Arden Vale stood in the center, her arms loose at her sides, helmet in one hand, silence pressed like armor across her chest. Beside her, Brigadier General Keene watched the floor indicator without blinking. The two black-clad operatives remained statues. No names, no patches, just presence. When the doors slid open, a sterile corridor waited. Concrete, steel, motion-triggered LEDs. The kind of place where secrets did not echo. They passed through 3 biometric checkpoints. No one asked for her ID this time. Her boots clicked against the polished floor like clock hands counting down. At the final door, Keene stopped and looked at her. Once we go in, no questions about the past. You speak to the intel. Let me handle the politics. Vale nodded. Keene tapped a code into the panel. The door unsealed with a hiss, revealing a low-lit operations room that smelled of coffee, tension, and old cables. Monitors glowed along the walls, satellite feeds, encrypted comms, shifting maps of places no tourist would ever go. 7 men and women sat at a wide, arc-shaped table, some in uniform, some not. All eyes turned to her. She did not flinch. "Gentlemen," Keene said, his voice a command even when calm. "Captain Arden Vale." Flight designation Echo 12, deactivated 5 years ago under classified terms. She brings intel that overrides her own redacted status. A murmur. One of the civilians leaned forward, thinning hair, thick glasses, voice clipped. "I was told Echo program personnel were no longer active." "She's not," Keene said. "Not officially." "And you trust this intel?" "She survived Sierra Corridor." The room went still. Vale placed the manila folder on the table. "Recovered 3 days ago," she said evenly. Coded chatter pulled from dormant frequencies operating under ghost protocols. Designation, Sentinel Phase. Another voice, younger, skeptical. "That program was shut down years ago." She turned the first page. "Not shut down. Rebranded and relocated." The maps lit up in sequence as she laid out the data. Drone captures, intercepted packets, and one satellite image that showed a facility deep in the highlands, barely visible, but ringed by new roads and heat signatures too regular to be civilian. Cross-reference with known Axis intel and untagged operatives from Raven Flight. Movement patterns match Cold Echo protocol. The room changed then, from dismissal to discomfort, and finally to fear. Someone cleared their throat. "You think they're building it again?" "No," she said. "I think they already have." General Keene stepped forward, voice low. "What she's saying is this. If they activate the phase gate, we'll be blind. Across 6 theaters. Cyber, SATCOM, drone systems, all dark." Another officer leaned forward. "We lost 6 operators last month in Sector 9. No trace. No feed. Now we know why." The woman in civilian clothes at the far end finally spoke. Her voice was measured, professional, dangerous. "And why now, Captain Vale? After 5 years in the dark, you resurface with this? What changed?" Vale met her gaze. "I stopped waiting for someone else to care." The silence after that was different. It was the kind that came before movement. Keene broke it. "I'm authorizing Operation Emberfall. Captain Vale will brief lead recon and remain as mission support." The woman raised an eyebrow. "With respect, General." "She is a ghost. No current status, no chain of command." "She is the only one who saw it coming," Keene replied. "And she is the only one who got out alive." Someone murmured, "Echo 12 always did fly alone." Vale spoke, just loud enough. "Not this time." The briefing concluded in silence. Papers shuffled. Orders signed. Keene walked beside her down the corridor afterward. The lights felt warmer now. But the air was colder. "You realize what you just did in there," he said. "I told the truth." He gave a small, tired smile. "Truth has consequences. That room runs on doubt and memory." I have both. They stopped at a junction. 2 guards waited at the end of the hall. You'll be assigned a handler, full security access, and a pilot if you want one. I'll fly myself. He nodded. Then added quietly, You sure you're ready to do this again? She looked down at her hands, weathered, steady, still marked by flight grease and ghost ink. I never stopped. She turned and walked toward the ops wing, past the guards, past the caution signs, past everything that had tried to erase her. In her locker, her old flight suit had been waiting. Cleaned, folded, untouched for 5 years. She ran a hand over the shoulder patch, the ghost of a hawk still visible under worn stitching. This time, they would not forget her. The flight hangar was quiet at 0300. A place once alive with roaring engines now slept under sodium lights. Old banners hung limp from the rafters, their unit insignias faded, half forgotten. No music played. No ground crew moved, just the soft buzz of the fluorescent fixtures and the measured click of boots on concrete. Captain Arden Vale moved across the hangar alone, a shadow of her former self only in the eyes of others. In her own mind, she had never left. Her eyes found it before the rest of her body did. Falcon 9-2, tail number still intact, rested beneath a canvas tarp near the rear of the bay. A retired stealth recon craft, part drone, part pilot, decommissioned after the Echo Division was shut down. They never stripped it for parts. No one dared. Arden stopped in front of it, resting her hand on the frame. Still remember me? The hull was cold, but something in her chest warmed. Behind her, a soft footstep. She turned, already knowing who it was. A man in civilian field gear stood by the edge of the light. Dark jacket, headset slung around his neck, a thermos in one hand. He was in his 40s, lean, quiet, with the wary posture of someone who never quite stopped running recon even when stateside. Name's Jace Nolan. Mission handler, he said. They told me you don't like pilots. I like pilots, she replied. I do not like passengers. He smirked. Fair. They stood in silence for a moment, staring at the tarp-covered aircraft. Keene said you used to fly this bird off the books. I flew it off the radar. He paused, then offered the thermos. She took it, the warmth cutting through the chill in her fingers. You sure about coming back in on this? He asked. She looked at him. You read the file? Twice. Then you already know why. He did. But he wanted to hear her say it, so she did. They erased my unit. Every op, every commendation, called it a security necessity. But the ones behind that, those who built the phase gate and sold the code to private hands, never stopped. They just buried it deeper. Nolan nodded slowly. You're not just here to stop it. You're here to expose it. No one else will. The hangar lights flickered once, then stabilized. Far across the bay, 2 engineers began prepping the service bay without making eye contact. Word had traveled. She turned back to the aircraft and pulled the tarp down in a single motion. The dark surface gleamed like oil beneath moonlight. Its wings were folded, ready to rise. The cockpit glass still bore the marks of her final flight, scratches from shrapnel, heat-warped seams, and the ghost imprint of her handprint near the hatch. She ran her fingers over it again, this time with intent. This bird still flies? Barely, Nolan admitted. She needs software updates, flight permission, and a tactical override from Ops Command. Let me worry about the software, and Keene will take care of Ops. Nolan hesitated. And the override? Arden looked at him, something steel-like behind her eyes. You said it yourself. I do not like passengers. By 0430, they were airborne. No flight plan. No transponder. She flew low and fast, hugging the curves of the terrain like a whisper over glass. Nolan sat beside her in the co-pilot seat, eyes locked on a secondary display. "She handles like she remembers you," he said. "She does," Arden murmured. "Muscle memory." Hers and mine. Below them, the desert rolled out in endless ridges and ravines, red rock and bone-white sand veined with forgotten trails. Their destination lay 300 miles east, Obsidian Field, a long-abandoned Cold War comms site repurposed for darker things. At 0548, a voice crackled through their encrypted channel. "Echo 12, this is Black Ridge Control. You are in restricted airspace. Identify." Arden gave no reply. Nolan tensed. "You're on the old call sign. They'll scramble if you don't respond." She waited 2 seconds, then pressed transmit. "This is Captain Arden Vale. I am flying an authorized recon under Operation Emberfall. Confirm with General Keene." A long pause. Then, "Copy. Proceed?" "You are flying without call signs, Captain. That will raise questions." "That is the point." They landed just beyond the ridge, half buried in a temporary hangar set up by Keene's advance team. As the canopy opened, dust and sunlight filled the cockpit. Nolan climbed out first. Arden remained seated a moment longer. From her altitude, the world had looked silent. Clean. Now boots touched soil, and everything returned. Noise, weight, doubt. She stepped down, helmet under one arm, shoulders squared. Half a dozen field agents stood waiting. One of them stepped forward, a woman in fatigues with a tactical tablet and sharp eyes. "Captain Vale," she said, "welcome to the Edge." Arden looked past her, toward the compound in the distance. Gray steel. Guard towers, motion sensors. "No one noticed it growing?" she asked. They noticed, just not enough to care. That line cut deeper than intended. Vale nodded. "That ends now." As she approached the first checkpoint, the guards looked at her the same way they always had. Small, older, out of place. Until they saw the flight patch, and stepped aside. Inside the command tent, Keene waited alone. "Satellite confirms phase gate activation is scheduled in 72 hours, he said. "And the uplink route?" 3 unknown servers. Masked by humanitarian relay networks. One location matches your file. Arden leaned over the table, eyes scanning the terrain model. "They think we won't act fast enough." Keene looked at her. "They're wrong." She nodded, but did not smile, because they had been wrong before. And men had died for it. She looked toward the wall where the mission clock began to count down. This time there would be no room for doubt. And no margin for delay. The sky over Obsidian Field turned silver before dawn. In the command tent, filtered morning light traced long shadows over the mission board, lines drawn in red grease pencil, coded names, thermal overlays of a place no one was supposed to know existed. Captain Arden Vale stood at the edge of it, her arms crossed behind her back, body still, mind spinning like rotors waiting for clearance. Across from her, Director Mara Lorne was speaking. She wore no rank, but her presence operated on a frequency louder than metals. "We have verified signals emanating from 3 relay points. 2 were spoofed via medical NGOs. The 3rd is embedded in a defunct weather station." Classic laundering. All roads feed one endpoint. She tapped a grainy satellite image. The Keller Basin Research Compound. Fenced in, camouflaged, it looked like an archaeological outpost from space. Up close, it was something else. Vale nodded once. "That is where the phase gate is housed. Your file suggested as much, but now we have confirmation." From a side console, Nolan spoke without looking up. "And still no green light from Operations Command?" "They're stalling," Keene answered, arms folded, jaw locked. "They do not want to act on something a disgraced pilot found after 5 years off-grid." The word hung heavy in the air. Vale did not correct him. At 06:30, the tactical team arrived for briefing. 12 soldiers, 1 drone specialist, 1 demolition tech, none of them over 30. None of them had served in Echo or knew what Sierra Corridor meant. They wore clean gear, clean minds. Vale stood before them in full suit. No speech, just the schematic. The structure is divided into 4 main zones, she began. Perimeter defenses are passive. Optical triggers, seismic sensors, anti-drone countermeasures. Entry must be manual, no remote insertion. One of the younger operators, Staff Sergeant Ortiz, frowned. This is a black site, no known records. How do we have blueprints? Vale met his eyes. Because I helped build the system it's running on. A flicker of uncertainty, a glance toward Nolan, toward Keene. Vale continued. Inner Zone C contains the relay array. Intel suggests an active phase gate core protected by biometric authorization. Unknown guards, likely automated redundancy. Another operator raised a hand. Permission to ask, why is this not a Delta team operation? Because Delta declined, Keene said flatly. Said threat was theoretical. But it's not, Vale added. It's breathing. And if we wait for a full field authorization, it will go dark again. The room went quiet. Then Nolan stepped forward. Listen up. This is not a recovery mission. This is not a drill. You have one objective. Get inside, disable the core, extract. Phase gate activates in 30 hours. If that happens, we will not be able to track a single black operation on this side of the hemisphere. Ortiz spoke again. And you, Captain, you're coming with us? Vale looked at him, calm. I am going ahead. The room shifted again. Questions tightened jaws but did not reach lips. By 09:30, Vale stood alone inside the field armory. No insignia on her gear, no call sign on her flight pack. Just her name, stenciled into an old helmet with weathered paint and a faint hawk shadow beneath it. She strapped a lightweight weapon to her hip, then reached for the small velvet pouch she had not opened in years. Inside was a silver medallion, smooth and unmarked. It had been issued after her final unsanctioned flight. Given in secret. Buried by paperwork. She slipped it into the lining of her flight vest, just above her heart. Captain? Nolan appeared in the doorway, voice subdued. Mission clock just passed T-22. You sure you want to insert solo? Vale zipped the suit shut. This is not about what I want. He nodded. We have a contact inside the facility. They'll be near sublevel 2. Codename, Finch. Vale paused. That name is not accidental. No, Nolan admitted. He asked to speak with you personally, if you make it that far. And if I don't, then he burns with the rest. The transport drone lifted off just before 1,000 hours, flying low, masked by electromagnetic interference scrubbers Vale had helped design half a decade ago. As the terrain passed beneath her, hills, veins of desert, the occasional glint of long-forgotten wreckage, Vale adjusted the straps on her harness and closed her eyes. Not to rest, to remember. Sierra Corridor, 5 years ago. No warning. No uplink, no backup, just her and a fractured satellite map. A team trapped behind enemy lines, 2 dead already, 1 still transmitting. Vale flew in under blackout, through a canyon so tight her wingtips left scars on the rock. Extracted 4 men from a location no one could triangulate, and when she landed, they did not shake her hand. They asked who had authorized her. Back in the drone, Vale opened her eyes as the automated voice spoke. 90 seconds to drop zone. She checked her gloves, secured the helmet, and whispered to no one in particular, I am done asking for permission. Below her, the Keller Basin facility shimmered under heat and secrecy. Inside its walls, The phase gate pulsed with untapped power, and in its shadows, someone was waiting to see if the myth of Ghost Hawk was real. The drone hatch opened. Arden Vale dropped into the silence, alone again, but not unseen this time. Because this time, the eyes that mattered were finally watching. The drop point was dust and silence. Captain Arden Vale hit the ground in a crouch, knees bending into loose rock, the drone already gone above her, silent and black as the sky. The ridge above Keller Basin loomed ahead, red earth cut like a scar across the open desert. No alarms, no motion sensors. No movement on the outer wall, which meant they had not seen her. Or they wanted her to come closer. Vale moved low, pressing herself into the terrain. Wind carried dry grit across her visor, the smell of rust and electrical discharge heavy in the air. Below, the facility sprawled in geometric quiet. 4 long buildings, 1 central command spire, and a buried substructure that pulsed faint heat into the night. She reached the first checkpoint by memory, not sight. A faded maintenance hatch, half buried in dust and long abandoned brush. She ran her gloved fingers along the bottom seam until they hit the catch, still wired. Still waiting. She disabled the alarm with a bypass module from her belt. Old tech, but her tech. It clicked once. Then opened. The tunnel beyond was damp, airless. Her boots sank slightly with each step. Pipes hummed overhead, the same frequency as a heartbeat. She descended deeper. 50 meters in, she reached the internal access gate. It was newer, sealed with an iris lock and an encrypted biometric sensor, civilian grade but modified. Vale placed her hand flat against the reader. The red light scanned once, then turned green. She exhaled. Keene had promised her identity was still buried somewhere in the system. Apparently, someone never erased the original Echo credentials. The gate slid open. Inside, the air changed, cooler, filtered. Tainted with something chemical, antiseptic and lithium maybe. The hallway was empty, clean, humming. Surveillance nodes blinked red at even intervals. She moved between them in the dead spaces. Every 20 feet, a new sensor. Every third sensor, a motion trap. She counted in her head, timed them with her pulse. At the first corner, she froze. Voices. Muffled. 1 male, 1 female. Arguing. She pressed herself into the crook between pipe and wall and listened. Too soon to activate without calibration. That is not your decision. The system is still unstable. Footsteps. Then silence. Vale waited 5 full seconds, then moved. She reached sublevel 2 without alert. The hallway was narrower here, the lighting blue-tinted, more medical than military. Glass doors revealed rooms with operating tables, server racks, decontamination showers. And one figure sitting on a bench at the end of the corridor. He wore a facility uniform, no weapon. No mask. Finch. She slowed as she approached. He looked up, older than she remembered. Deep lines etched from time spent on the wrong side of secrets. I asked for you, he said. Didn't know if they'd send anyone. Didn't expect it to be you. You're our inside. I am what's left of it. She scanned him once. No obvious signs of duress, but his hands were shaking. What is this place, Finch? He stood slowly, walked toward a glass panel and tapped it. Behind the glass was a chamber, cold, sterile, circular. In the center, a human silhouette suspended in a web of fiber-optic cords. Not alive, not dead. Vale's breath hitched. The gate's not just code, Finch said. It's interface. Biometric, neural, synthetic, organic, echo technology, spliced with captive cognition. She did not respond, because she recognized the figure in the suspension frame. A man she flew with, lost during the blackout op, declared KIA. Chambers, she whispered. They never let him die, just repurposed him. She took a step back. The world tilted. Why now? She asked. Why wake this? Finch turned. Because someone bought it. Someone who believes phase technology will end battlefield uncertainty. No unknowns. No hidden movements, perfect surveillance, permanent advantage. And they think they can contain it? He gave a hollow laugh. Containment is not the point. Control is. A sudden alert flashed red across the corridor screens. Subsystem breach detected. Sublevel 3. Finch's eyes went wide. They know. Vale drew her weapon. Then we move. They took a side route. Abandoned comms wing. Cold light flickering across discarded terminals and warped metal doors. As they rounded the final bend toward the server core, 2 guards stepped into view. Armed, armored. No time for stealth. Vale fired first, 2 rounds to the knee of the closer one, a sweep kick to the second. She disabled both before they could trigger their alarms. Finch stared, stunned. You haven't slowed down. I learned to make do, she said flatly. They reached the core, an octagonal room filled with humming towers and red-lit panels. At the center stood the interface, a pulsing orb of synthetic light, rotating slowly above a nested array of control terminals. Vale stepped forward, eyes locked on the central feed. Code poured across the screen. Phase gate, 182709. Activation imminent. She reached into her pack, pulled a black drive. The gate runs on mirrored logic, she said. I wrote the original override years ago, before they buried us. This shuts it down. Finch looked at the display, then at her. They'll kill us for this. They already did. She inserted the drive. The system stalled. Lights shifted. A pause. Then, override confirmed. Uplink terminated. Phase core locked. For 2 seconds, the entire compound fell into silence. Then klaxons roared. They ran. As boots thundered behind them and lights turned blood red. At the next junction, 3 guards blocked their path. Vale slid into cover behind a support beam, shoved Finch behind her. A flashbang hit the floor. She closed her eyes. The world went white. Then sound vanished. Then she was on the floor, ears ringing, body dragging forward, firing on instinct. 1 down. 2 down. 3rd turned. Ran. She pulled Finch up, bleeding from her temple, vision spinning. 1 hallway left, 1 exit. A voice echoed from behind. Arden Vale, stand down, you are unauthorized. You will be forgotten again. She turned her head once and whispered, No. They burst into the access shaft. Vale slammed the door shut. Locked it. Outside, fists pounded. Inside, silence. Finch fell to the floor, coughing. Was it worth it? Vale looked up the ladder, toward the faint light bleeding in from the top. Yes. But her hand trembled. Because she knew what came next. They reached the surface, choking on dust and warnings. Captain Arden Vale pulled Finch through the last steel hatch just as the perimeter alarms screamed into full saturation. Red strobes cut through morning fog like veins of blood across the desert. The sun was rising, but it brought no warmth. Behind them, Keller Basin rumbled beneath the weight of its own lies. Above them, a surveillance drone buzzed low. Vale raised her hand in signal. No response. Keene said extraction would be 5 minutes post-disable, she muttered. Finch leaned against a boulder, blood soaking his shoulder. You think they're still coming? I think someone does not want witnesses. She keyed her comm. Mockingbird to Emberfall Command. Phase core neutralized. Hostile pursuit active. Need extraction. Code Iron Echo. Repeat, Code Iron Echo. Only static answered. Then a voice, but not Keen's. Captain Vale. This is Colonel Abram Knox, Acting Regional Command. General Keen has been relieved. You are operating outside authorized parameters. Stand down and await detainment. Finch's head dropped. They're folding it, burying everything. Vale did not blink. Negative. Phase gate disabled. Facility compromised. We need dust off now or secondary containment becomes necessary. A pause, then, no extraction authorized. Evac denied. You are considered a rogue element. The signal died. Silence. And then the realization settled like ash. They were not supposed to get out. Vale turned, eyes scanning the horizon. To the east, low ridges, scrub brush, and a faint shimmer of heat where the secondary extraction site had once been charted. If we make it to Ridge 12, she said, there's an old recon vault. I can trigger a blind call beacon. It's off-book, pre-satellite. Finch blinked. You're carrying an analog distress system? She adjusted the strap on her pack. I designed half of this infrastructure. I never trusted them to maintain it. He gave a dry, bitter laugh. Paranoia or foresight? Same thing, depending on who lives. They moved. By 0817, the first pursuit team appeared behind them. 2 light vehicles. 1 drone overhead. No insignia. No comms. No names. Vale led them across broken rock, through ravines too narrow for wheels and too sharp for infrared tracking. Finch followed, stumbling now, breath ragged. She did not slow. Not because she was unkind, because she knew they would both die if she did. At 0903, they reached Ridge 12, an abandoned comms bunker covered by a broken solar array. Vale climbed the hatch alone, pried loose a rusted panel, and activated a hidden switch beneath the exposed wiring. A tiny red light blinked once, then held, beacon active. She slid down beside Finch and offered him her canteen. We have 30 minutes before they triangulate. Less if they get lucky. He drank in silence. Then asked, Why do you keep doing this? She looked at him, sweat and blood streaking her jaw. Because someone needs to. That someone was gone for 5 years. She let the words settle, then spoke, quietly, like confession. I waited for someone else to care, for a clearance to be restored, for a file to resurface, but no one came, no one remembered. And in that silence I learned the truth. Finch stared. There is no rescue, she continued. Not for people like us. There is only return, or ruin. A beat passed, then, and sometimes they're the same. They sat in stillness as the wind shifted. Behind them, a black plume of smoke now rose from Keller Basin. Someone had triggered self-destruct. Whether to hide evidence or ensure their silence, she did not know. But she knew what it meant. Obsidian Field had been compromised. The files Finch carried were now the only proof. The beacon, the only thread of hope. And someone, somewhere, had just pulled the pin on everything. At 0938, the vehicle appeared on the far edge of the ridge. Not a drone. Not pursuit. An unmarked VTOL, matte black, slow descent, no lights. Vale stood, hand on her weapon, uncertain. Is that ours? Finch asked. We'll know in a minute. The ramp lowered. A single figure emerged. Civilian clothing, gray coat, hard jaw. Familiar gait. Director Mara Lorne. She walked up the hill slowly, wind tugging her coat. When she spoke, her voice was low. Your signal was intercepted. I rerouted it before Central Command could. Vale did not move. Why? Lorne's eyes were sharp, unreadable. Because I read the backup Finch transmitted. because someone needed to burn the rot before it spread. She reached into her coat, pulled a thermal device, and handed it to Vale. Coordinates, a location, remote. Secure. No logs. I have 22 people waiting to testify if we can get them out in time. Your phase gate breach just gave them leverage. Finch coughed. What's the cost? Lorne answered without blinking. You disappear again. No media, no ceremony, no return to rank. Vale took the device. I was never doing it for that. Lorne nodded once, then turned to board. As the VTOL lifted, dust churning around them, Vale turned to Finch. You up for a second extraction? He groaned. I am up for never seeing another sublevel again. They climbed aboard. As the ridge fell away behind them, Vale looked out the window, not at the fire, not at the smoke, but at the emptiness beyond. She had given up her name once. This time, she had traded something deeper. Her silence. And silence, once broken, never fits back the same. 3 days later, Arden Vale walked into a government building that officially did not exist. No name on the door. No plaque, no visitors. Just a security checkpoint, a retinal scan, and the soft buzz of recycled air conditioning in the belly of a system built to forget its mistakes. She wore no uniform, only a slate-gray jacket, the kind that said civilian, but not civilian. A man waited for her near the end of the corridor, arms crossed, eyes wary. Colonel Marcus Keene, reinstated barely. His tie was crooked. His expression was not. They thought you died, he said. I did, she replied. They shook hands like former soldiers do, without joy, without comfort, just recognition. Keene handed her a thin folder. 37 files, all redacted. All copies of what Finch exfiltrated before the facility burned. She flipped through them, noticed the details. One page still carried her name. Arden E. Vale, flight designation Echo 12, presumed inactive, no longer in operational chain of command. I assume that's been updated, she said. Keene gave a tired smile. Not exactly. He nodded toward a door behind him. Frosted glass. No handle. They want to offer you something else. She raised an eyebrow. Another field op? He shook his head. No, something worse. Inside the room, 3 people waited. One wore stars. One wore a Justice Department pin. One wore civilian fatigue, the kind spooks wore when pretending not to be government. No introductions. No pleasantries. The woman with the stars spoke first. Captain Vale? You are not on record. You were never present at Keller Basin. No mission existed. No casualties reported, you understand? Yes, she said. Good. Because we are opening a new task directive, modeled on the work you and Director Lorne initiated. Unofficial oversight. Unconventional threat assessment. Unaccounted capability. The justice man leaned forward. You exposed something we can no longer deny. That our own assessment systems are blind to the quiet operators, the ones who never make the boards. And you want me to find them, she said. No, the woman in fatigue replied. We want you to train them. Vale paused. The silence in the room expanded. Not oppressive. Expectant. She thought about Ridge 12, about the heat of pursuit, about Finch's bleeding shoulder, and the truth locked in that chamber below ground. I will need full autonomy, she said. Granted. No paper trail. We prefer it that way. She nodded once, and walked out. That night, Vale sat alone in a temporary apartment built into the side of a federal holding annex. No windows. No neighbors, only a cot, a desk, and a box delivered by courier. Inside the box was her old flight patch, the hawk. Someone had stitched it back together. She pinned it to the inside of her jacket. Not for show. Just memory. Then opened her laptop. A blank document waited. She typed one line. Initiating directive. Ghost pattern. Protocol. Identify. Restore. Deploy. Phase 1. Candidate. Active. The next morning, she stood before 7 people. None wore uniforms. One was a drone tech dishonorably discharged for insubordination. One was a linguist who'd cracked enemy codes faster than AI. One had a scar from an operation the Pentagon refused to acknowledge. All had been written off. All had heard about her. "You are not here because you fit the profile," Vale said. "You are here because the system could not see you, because you learned to move in silence, to observe, to adapt." She stepped forward, voice steady. "This program is not about revenge. It is not about redemption. It is about readiness. We are building a team for threats that do not exist on maps, missions that will never be briefed, and operations that, if you fail, will be buried so deep no one will know to miss you." A long pause, then, "If that frightens you, leave now. No questions asked." No one moved. She continued, "You will not have rank or recognition. What you will have, if you earn it, is purpose." Her voice softened. "The kind of purpose I lost, and found again." In fire. Silence. Then the door opened. Mara Lorne stepped in. She handed Vale a small folder. No name, no return stamp. "This just came in from a private source," she said. "It's odd." Vale opened it. Inside was a single photo. A concrete chamber, a broken interface, a shadowy figure barely visible behind glass. And a handwritten line on the back, "It is not over." Her pulse slowed, froze, then kicked hard against her ribs. Lorne watched her carefully. "We dismantled the gate." "Yes," Vale said, "but not the people behind it." "No." She closed the folder. Looked at her new team. Everything had changed, and it had just begun again. At precisely 0600, the Echo Directive was activated. No press release, no ceremony. No brass bands, just a silent keystroke inside a buried Department of Defense subnet, triggering a cascade of access permissions, encrypted alerts, and pre-written orders routed through shell organizations. It was everything Arden Vale had once flown against. Now, she would lead it. 2 weeks later, she stood inside Hangar 6 Bravo at an unmarked facility nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Concrete walls. LED strips. No identifying features except the people who moved with a particular kind of precision. The kind that came from being underestimated for too long. A dozen new operatives filed in. They ranged in age from 23 to nearly 50. Each one had passed a background review not by resume, but by pattern. By what they did when no one watched. By how they operated in the margins between regulation and reality. Vale stood at the head of the room in flight boots and a gray utility jacket, hands clasped behind her back. "I was never meant to be a leader," she said. "I was meant to be forgotten." No one spoke. "I was designed to be erased. No records. No commendation, just a quiet exit after one final mission." She paused. "But I survived. And that made me dangerous." She stepped forward, voice lower. "Because I remembered." Later that evening, she sat in her private office, once a tool room, now converted with minimalist care. A single plaque hung on the wall behind her. Operation Emberfall. Be silent, burn clean. Beside her, a secure tablet buzzed once. Message received. Origin. Unverified clearance. Ghost Level 3. She tapped it open. One line of text. They're building another gate. Not here, not ours. A location followed, Karakum Basin, Turkmenistan. Vale stared at the screen for a long moment, then opened a secure channel to Lorne. They moved faster than we thought. Lorne replied, voice grave, which means we are the only ones who can move at all. I want boots on the ground. Ghost trained only. I'll lead the brief. You're not cleared for field re-entry. I am not asking. A beat passed. Understood, Lorne said. Authorization granted, I'll scrub the trail. That night, Vale stood alone on the tarmac outside the new airfield. The wind bit sharp across the concrete. She welcomed it. She wore her old flight suit beneath a tactical vest. The insignia on her chest was new. A silver hawk. No name. One of her new recruits approached. The youngest, sharp-eyed, restless. Captain? Vale looked up. You ready? The recruit nodded, nervous. Always thought operatives had call signs. Vale smiled, faintly. They do. They just do not choose their own. And yours? She turned toward the aircraft. I was called Ghost Hawk, she said. But I prefer something quieter now. The engine spooled up behind them, the blades howling into the darkness. As the transport lifted into the black, carrying 12 ghosts into a conflict that officially did not exist, Ardenvale watched the lights below fade into specks. She thought of the assessment board, of Keller Basin, of all the missions that would never be logged. Then she closed her eyes. She was not here for medals, not for forgiveness, only for the others like her. The ones told they were too small, too quiet, too late. The ones who stayed, the ones who remembered, the ones who moved without permission, and became the only thing standing between silence and collapse. The quiet operators, the forgotten edge, the ones who carried fire in the shadows. And this time she was not alone.